Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I'm in a different angle of my room. I'm directly opposite my window because natural light. I'm not very good at lighting. I'm not very good at the whole video thing. I'm still experimenting to this day. I hope it's okay. If not, I apologize. But yeah, anyway, as you can see from the title of this video, I decided to do the writing obsessions tag. Nobody tagged me, but as always, I like tagging myself in things. So I only saw 2 videos done of this, and I'll link both of them down below. One of them was done by Sophie Von and one of them was done by Gio. So both of them will be down below so you can check them out, because I think a video like this is just super interesting, and you should it's definitely interesting to see what sort of things writers include, or what sort of things writers like including in nearly every project. So that's what I'll be doing today. At first, I didn't think I had any writing obsessions. I thought everything I do is completely random or fits a specific project. I didn't think there was a rhyme or reason for all my projects. I just thought each project has its own thing. Apparently not, because I do have quite a bit of writing obsessions that I wasn't aware I had, and I'm going to discuss them in this video. So the first writing obsession that I have, didn't really notice until this, is that my main characters most of the time have to have a name beginning with a vowel. So that's either A, E, I, O, or U. I love vowel names, especially names beginning with A, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people like names beginning with A. I just think there's a lot of names you can pick from that begin with that letter. But me specifically, I use A in a lot of projects. For instance, in my current dystopian trilogy, my main character is called Aveline, beginning with an A. And in a very old project that I wrote a very long time ago, my main character was called Alexander. In a project that I scrapped that I actually talked about perhaps going back to, I don't know how else to describe it other than the sad one. Basically like a project that deals with like grief and deals with therapy and mental health, all that. And my main character in that was called Avery. And in my short story that I'm currently writing, my main character's name is Annie. So, and in my current standalone LMC, this character's name has since changed, so I don't mind telling you. Her name used to be Eleonora, so with an E. So as you can see, I really like names beginning with vowels, especially the vowel A. I don't know why, I just think they're really pretty, I guess. In fact, I have a project that I want to work on, and this character's name I'm looking to begin with an I. Not because I wasn't actively thinking like, oh, this character's name is going to begin with an I, but because every name that I've pinpointed for this character so far begins with an I. I guess I just really like vowel names. Another one of my writing obsessions is to do with character dynamics. And in terms of this, I love having, for example, the romantic interests be like 2 different people. I don't think I ever made the 2 romantic interests like the same things, be the same people essentially. I always make one character this way and then another character this way, and yet they just mesh well together. I really like the term opposites attract apparently, because if I look at every project I've ever written, these characters are all quite different. I really like making 2 characters quite different from each other and then exploring how the differences make them really well together. In my current dystopian trilogy, that's exactly with my characters. They're like 2 opposite people. One of them is like my main character. She's very careful, she's very critical, she's very like analytical, she uses her brain a lot, and she doesn't really like taking risks. She just does things that she knows don't have risk. She knows things for sure, and she's very calculating, and she's very quiet, you know, she doesn't do anything to stand out. Whereas her love interest, her main love interest, he's more loud, out there, he takes the risks, he does things, thinks later, and yet they mesh well together, I guess. It's like he teaches her to take more risks, she teaches him to think more. In my standalone, it's the same thing, only obviously they're not exactly like that, but they're still pretty different from each other. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I like having romantic interests be different from each other. Didn't realize I do that for almost all of my projects, so that's pretty interesting to think about. Another one of my writing obsessions is I like using repetition a lot, and I don't mean repetition in terms of the fact I repeat myself, like I repeat the same information I already told you. I mean in terms of the fact I like emphasizing something by repeating it at least twice. For example, he didn't realize his consequences would have these actions. He didn't realize that this meant he can never really live again. He didn't realize that this meant he can never live at all. So I like using repetition a lot to like emphasize something, and I try to not do that a lot. Like that's like a writing thing I don't really like using too much because I feel like it gets too much if I use it too much. Oh my gosh. I feel like repetition of repetition isn't like a good thing to do. It could be, I just never do it myself. I do it quite a lot in my novels, and I do it for every novel I write. It's just the way I write my books. I just think I want to really dramatize the way my characters are feeling in certain situations, so I do this. And I wish I had a better example than the one I gave you, but the dramatized bits that I normally do this for are quite spoilery because I'm trying to dramatize a situation. So one of the other writing obsessions that I have is having the male lead having dark hair and light eyes, and like for instance having black hair and blue green grey eyes, or brown hair and blue green grey eyes. I don't know why I like doing this, but in every project I ever had, my main male character has dark hair, light eyes. I like doing it because I think it looks really nice. And normally if a main character has dark eyes, it's the female protagonist or the main female character. So I don't know why I do it, I just really like it, I guess. The only exception I think to this is in my standalone, where the main character does have dark hair and dark eyes, and the reason I gave him dark eyes is because I did know that I always give my male characters dark hair and light eyes, and I wanted to change it up. But normally my go-to for male characters is dark hair, light eyes. And the only time that I really give males light hair is if they're a side character or a minor character or just somebody there to help my main characters advance in their arc. Another thing I like to do in my books is making the main character, the protagonist, the person we follow, having the biggest arc in the book. And what I mean by this is I like making them be this one thing and then completely changing them to be the best self they can be. For instance, if they're like super rude and unlikable by the cast and they're just this controversial character in the book, I like to give them the biggest redemption arc in the world to make them like the hero of the story. I do like giving characters like big arcs in general, but normally my main character has the biggest arc of them all. I mean, I guess that's obvious because they are the main, but normally the main character has an arc, but like it goes from them being like not willing to change to them changing, so it's a pretty good arc. My arcs are like the biggest arcs of the book. They go from complete this to something completely opposite. And of course, still keep their traits. So if, for example, going back to that rude, careless, not really liked by people character, I can still make them be pretty grumpy. I can still make them be pretty careless, but I can make it in a caring way, in a positive way, where they're still like that, but they care more, even if they're careless, if that makes any sense. Another one of my writing obsessions, which is also to do with looks, is if I have like 2 leads or 3 leads or 3 significant characters, I like making them all look different from each other. For example, if my main character has like brown hair, then the people around her, the people close to her or like significant to the plot that are there from day one, they will look different from her. They might have different color hair, different length of hair, different eye color, so they never really have the same attributes. I do this because in my head it's easier to imagine different features of characters. So like if I think of ginger hair, I think of this specific character. If I think of brown hair, I think of a specific other character. And I know I can do this by just like really digging into the character names, but I'm a very visual learner, so if I see different characters in my head, then I think of their different personalities, and I just find it easier to get into their heads. And also, I just think it's really fun to give characters different looks from each other, because then like you can describe what purple hair might look, or how brown hair might look, or how this character might look with this specific feature. And I've done this in every project. For instance, in my dystopian trilogy, which I keep using as an example because I've already written the first book, so it's easy to talk about this. My main character has brown hair, my main character's friend has ginger hair, and my main character's love interest has black hair. So they're all different from each other. And the final obsession that I want to talk about in this video is that all of my books have to have some sort of fantasy element to it, whether it be a pretend place or like a full-on magic system. In every book I ever wrote, there's always something that I add creatively to the book. I do this because I just think it's like interesting if you add your own spin on the book, and I also really like fantasy, but I don't always write fantasy because some of my ideas, like, they're either for contemporary or they're more science fiction, and so I like adding in like little fantasy creative elements to books to try and make them my own and like different from other books, if that makes sense. In my current dystopian trilogy, I add like the fantasy element being this virus that made the world the way it is, and with my standalone, the fantasy element is that they're in like this pretend, well, not pretend, it's like a made-up town that I made, and a made-up school and a made-up place in a real place. So basically it's set in America. I haven't quite picked the state yet. It was going to be Arizona, but I don't know if I want it set in Arizona anymore. It's set in America, but in a pretend made-up town, and that's like that element to it. So there's always like that fantasy creative element to my books. That's it for the writing obsessions tag. I couldn't really think of much else that I do, mainly because I've only really drafted 2 projects fully, and one of them has been scrapped, and the other one I just really finished, and it's only the first book in a series. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one, and yeah, bye!